In this video, I'm going to try and outline the ways that the modern man is radically out of touch with the external world, and how this wasn't the case any time previous, whether medieval or the classical period, where they had a Platonic worldview which put them directly in contact with the external world. So the herald of the modern period was famously René Descartes. He split the world into two distinct ontological categories, mind and matter. Each realm was completely separate. They shared no fundamental properties. Mind was the realm in which we dwell, and it is full of subjective experiences, beliefs, values, and it moves according to our will and purpose. Matter, on the other hand, is lifeless and inert. It is spatially extended and contains energy and moves according to the principles of pure mathematics. Clearly, then, these properties that mind has, matter does not have, and the properties that matter has, mind does not. This theory is known as Cartesian dualism. Let us put aside the question of how these two realms causally interact within our brains, and just focus on how we perceive the spatially extended material world. So, let us imagine a triangle in the spatially extended material world. How does this enter our minds? Well, we know the story, at least half of it. Light bounces off the triangle, enters our eye, and is absorbed by our retina. The pattern of light is then translated to electrical pulses, which travels down our optic nerve and into our brains. This electrical signal within our brains is then somehow decoded, and this is where it gets mysterious, transformed into the other ontological category, which is our mental realm. It is transformed into a subjective experience of the triangle. It is transformed into a simulation of the objective physical triangle. So, this might sound strange. You might be in the habit of assuming that the triangle that you are looking at belongs to the material realm and not the mind realm, because it feels like that. It feels like what you are looking at is spatially extended, like the objects in the material realm. But this is an illusion. The material triangle, with the light bouncing off it, remains in the material realm. All your brain receives is at best electrical impulses, from which it creates a simulation, and you are looking purely at the simulation. This simulation is 100% part of your mental realm, and that is why you can see it. It is true, you might be thinking that the triangle you are looking at in the mental realm is causally dependent on the real, spatially extended material triangle in the physical realm, and that if the spatially extended material triangle changed, so would your mental image or simulation of it also change. But these are still two distinct ontological entities. To grasp this distinction, consider a pencil half submerged in a glass of water. The spatially extended material pencil is straight, but your simulation of that pencil is bent because the light has refracted in the water. So, your mental simulation is bent, and is therefore clearly distinct from the straight, spatially extended real material pencil which caused the simulation. So the point to note from this is that what you are looking at is your own mind when you look at a pencil, whenever you look at the external world. And this is the effect of Cartesian dualism, of slicing reality into two distinct kinds of ontological substances. It is this radical disconnection with the spatially extended material world. Once Descartes has split the world into these two kinds of substances, we can no longer stick our heads out of our eyes and have a look around. We are stuck within our minds. The beautiful world that we walk within is in truth our own mental simulation of the objective material reality. What lies just beyond the hazy blue sky is in fact only the top of your skull. After this, radical bifurcation of reality was digested by the Europeans. The modern period, with its two great strands of philosophy, arose to deal with this problem of radical disconnection with the external world. The English empiricists and the German idealists. The English empiricist philosophers such as Francis Bacon, Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and later Bertrand Russell and Richard Dawkins even, argued that we can learn truths about the spatially extended material world beyond our minds through the use of mathematics, logic, and science. This faith in the power of reason and science gave birth to the Enlightenment in England and to liberal politics. On the other side of the channel, the German idealist philosophers such as Immanuel Kant, Hegel, Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, Heidegger, and later postmodernists were skeptical of the power of reason and logic and science to help us grasp truths beyond the prison of our minds. They claimed, following their foundation in Kant's book, The Critique of Pure Reason, that even the faculty of reason itself was a purely mental phenomenon. And therefore, since it was a pure mental phenomenon and not spatially extended or in any way like the material world, even the power of science and of mathematics, which were based on logic, were fundamentally mental. So this skepticism in the power of mathematics, logic, and science gave birth to what we could now call the Counter-Enlightenment in Germany. And it gave birth to communist and fascist politics. This conflict between the two philosophical schools has been the great conflict of the modern philosophical period. Now, if Cartesian dualism invented the realm of matter and split the world into mind and matter, we might wonder, how was the world conceived before this rupture? Well, the classical and medieval world was thoroughly Platonic in its worldview. It conceived of this shared, spatially extended world that we all live in, not as inert matter, but of ideas. And so matter, as we conceive it, did not exist, but everything, including what we would call matter, material objects, were ideas. And so everything was entirely mental. So, like Cartesian mind-matter dualism, being was still split into two, but they were two different kinds of ideas. There were universal or pure ideas, such as our ideas of a horse, and there were also spatially extended or sensible ideas that were particularized in this world, such as an actual specific horse. So these sensible ideas are like our modern conception of matter, in that they had spatial and temporal extension, but they were still considered as ontologically the exact same as these pure abstract ideas, and in fact were considered as less real than their pure, nonsensible, perfect counterparts of which they got their reality. They were only derivatives. For example, Michelangelo's actual extended physical statue made of marble was a poor imitation of his non-spatially extended idea of Michelangelo's David. So let us now consider how perception was conceived of in this Platonic and Aristotelian worldview prior to the modern period. Well, the spatially extended material triangle is no longer obviously material. It is no longer a separate ontological category to our ordinary subjective ideas floating around our minds. The spatially extended triangle is an idea like the mental simulation of the triangle in my mind. They both share the same ontology. Furthermore, ideas are not the kind of things which can be pinned down purely to a sort of spatial location. Ideas are abstractions, and as abstractions are free to manifest in multiple places and at many different times. The idea of a spider is not pinned down to any specific spider. Even if all spiders died, the idea would last, for it is not the kind of thing which can die. So we can ask now, in what sense then is the triangle simulation that I am looking at within my mind different to the spatially extended, what we would call material triangle, but obviously in this Platonic worldview, pure idea? Well, in the Platonic worldview, there is no real difference between the mental simulation of the triangle I am looking at and the spatially extended triangle in the world which is giving rise to this simulation. They are both one and the same idea, and are therefore identical. This is why Aristotle's theory of perception is considered a direct theory of perception, because we are directly in contact with reality, whereas our modern materialistic theories of perception are often considered as indirect theories of perception. This formation of the outside world within us is what Aristotle is getting at when he writes of our sensing faculties, such as the eye, that the sensitive is potentially such as the sensible thing is in fulfillment. It is affected when it is not like, but once it has been affected it becomes like, and is such as that. Thus when we perceive a triangle, we become, as absurd as it sounds, partly triangular, simply because the spatially extended triangle now exists within us. Whereas on the Cartesian materialistic view, the spatially extended triangle definitely does not exist within us, but remains exactly where it is, and only a simulation of it exists in us. Thus, sight perception on the Aristotelian worldview is more like heat perception, in the simple sense that when we put a hot water bottle onto us, we become partly hot, and likewise, when we sense a triangle or look at a triangle, we become partly triangular. The point to note from this Aristotelian worldview is it also fits in with our common sense. We feel ourselves to be radically in touch with the world, because our subjective simulation of the world is identical with the spatially extended world. The reason that we moved into the modern period is that many of the Aristotelian precepts, such as the geocentric worldview, were knocked out by the Copernican revolution. This revolution didn't actually undermine Aristotle's theory of perception specifically, but it undermined people's faith in authority of his philosophy and fomented a kind of skeptical intellectual climate. It was in fact the skeptical intellectual climate which drove Descartes in his meditations to doubt everything, and since the only thing that he could not doubt was his mind, but he could doubt matter, he considered these two things to be separate substances, and gave rise, amongst other arguments, to his worldview, his Cartesian dualistic worldview. And the Aristotelian worldview was discarded. Some have claimed that the theory of direct perception outlined by Aristotle deserves to be discarded, because if the world and my mental representation of the world are identical as Aristotle claims, then how can we count for illusions? After all, if the triangle in the spatially extended world has an angle of 45 degrees, but I misperceive it as having 40 degrees, how is the triangle that I'm looking at identical with the triangle in the spatially extended world? French and Waters, in their paper, The Invalidity of the Argument from Illusion, show that this kind of concern is unwarranted. The presence of the 40-degree angle does not prove that I am not aware also of the spatially extended triangle with 45 degrees. It only proves that I am aware of a 40-degree angle which is definitely not part of that spatially extended triangle. I can be aware of both. I can be aware of the triangle and aware of a 40-degree angle which is not part of that triangle. As an analogy, to get your head round this, let us consider the pure ideas. If myself and a friend think of a spider, but I mistakenly conceive of the spider with 6 legs, it does not follow that we are thinking of two different things. I was thinking of a spider, he was thinking of a spider. We were thinking of the same idea. But my idea simply had a feature which was actually not part of the idea of a spider. Likewise, when I misperceive the spatially extended idea of a triangle, I am perceiving the exact same triangle as everyone else, but merely also perceiving the wrong angles. So this is the Aristotelian worldview of perception. And this worldview puts us radically in touch with the world, radically connected.